Welcome to the Heart-Led Business Show, where compassion meets commerce and leaders lead with love. Join your host, Tom Jacobs, as he delves into the insightful conversations with visionary business leaders who defy the status quo, putting humanity first and profit second. From heartfelt strategies to inspiring stories, this podcast is your compass in the world of conscious capitalism. So buckle up and let your heart guide your business journey.
Hello, heroes of heart-led hustle. Bringing a blitz of banking brilliance to our broadcast today is Andres Kleric, the co-captain of Fuse, a fintech that's fanning the flames of innovation. After a decade of dabbling on Wall Street, this wonder-filled Wall Street whiz is wowing the world with a new way to wayward lending lags. So tune in as we ignite a conversation about commitment, co-founding, and customization. Welcome to the Heart-Led Business Show, where we proudly practice the motto, all business, all heart, no hyperbole. Welcome, Andres, to the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So the first question that I like to ask everybody is, what's your definition of a heart-led business?
For me, a heart-led business is essentially like aligning personal goals and professional goals in a way that they intertwine, and you're ultimately there's alignment, right? Like, so I will tell you how does that come into fruition in my own business, right? So I am the son of immigrants. I remember being a teenager and going to banks to get the remittances that my father was sending us to Bolivia. So I associated banks with fairly positive things, right? Like, it allowed me to go to school, it allowed me to go to college, it allowed us to put food on the table. So as I became a career person, right? Like became a teenager, went to university and everything, I thought, hey, like if there's something that is dear to my heart, the financial system, right? Like, what is the most important part, non-human part of the financial system? Are banks, right? So when I thought, what type of career can I pursue that? I first started as a banker, then as an investor. And now, as I started a business with a co-founder, I thought I want to run in the same route. I want to make those places where like so much hope and was associated with when I was a kid, and I want to make them efficient. So like people can get access to more loans, that banks can be more profitable. They're not profitable. They have more money on their coffers. They have money in the coffers. That means more opportunity for everyone else because everyone understands the importance of banks in the financial system. So for me, it goes back to that kid getting remittances, and now it's kind of more at this broad spectrum of how do we make them more efficient.
That totally makes sense. And what a great story of your childhood and how that kind of inspired you now that you're looking back at that. So tell me a little bit about Fuse and the new startup that you've started and how you envision that kind of being a heart-led business as well. Because most people that are listening are probably going, banks? Tom, are you serious? Like heart-led business? That's like the least heart of anything. But I think you have a really interesting take on how to kind of get some heart out of bank.
Well, we can also think at the employee level, right? We as a startup, we have very young professionals kind of betting that they will learn like nowhere else by virtue of running Fuse, right? The type of like technological problems that we're solving for financial institutions, they're highly technical, right? So when people join, they could be working at a much more, a very predictable 9 to 5, but they chose us because they see the vision of what we want to do, right? So from a heart-led standpoint, it doesn't go amiss really. In my mind, I also feel like I owe it to these 20, 30 people that work with us that have bet like their 20s or 30s or older, like just to come work with us and like really turn this vision into a reality, right? So I want them to get the best out of this learning experience. I want them to learn more than anywhere else they would have learned. And that is a very important thing. Second thing, of course, your customers. I mean, not even second, right? On par with everything else. Your customers would actually just go with the typical traditional incumbents, and they bet on this two guys that are building in this space, and they are taking a risk, right? Because the companies have been building for decades. You've been building for a little bit, 5 years. So that level of trust and that intimate set of relationships you build, like it's not just a transaction, right? Like you see how they attach their hopes and dreams as organization. They also have employees, they have investors. You actually become very close to your customers, right? So you could be a lawyer, you could be anything, right? All this type of industries in which like heart is not the first thing that comes to mind. But everyone has families, everyone has food on the table. And I don't think of money, and particularly when it comes to like banking and things like that, as dirty, right? Like we use money every day, right? Like we pay for rent, we pay for our mortgage, we pay for food, we pay for transportation. And making the process of like the economy move happens through that, right? So I'm very happy that we're making that efficient. It is an inherently easy to perceive as a boring segment of the market. But precisely because it's boring, it's very exciting because you come and build new things, right? Because for years, not that many people have been interested in solving this, right? It's the same way that's how like mathematical equations also get solved, right? Like someone that just was not paying attention to them, like they decided to write a theory about it. So like I think that from a product standpoint, I like the challenge of something that is perceived as boring because you put it in a new light.
Yeah. No, that's really an interesting take on it too. And I want to go back to, the employee piece of it. And, I read Richard Branson's first book, Losing My Virginity. And he always said that the priority for him are employees first, then customers, and that will take care of shareholders. And it sounds like what you were just saying, you talked about your employees first, and then the customers that you have, and then obviously you have shareholders as well. But if you take care of those first two, the third will take care of itself. Like, do you subscribe to that same philosophy?
Well, we're a venture-backed business, so we obviously like have investors that bet on us very early on, right? But they know that without great employees and like people that bet on us from a consumer standpoint, their money's gonna become vapor. Right. I'm incredibly grateful for our investors, but I do recognize that without customers or employees that build the real story, there's nothing more. Right. And I wholeheartedly agree with that vision of Branson.
Yeah. Cool. So talk to me a little bit about kind of the technology that you're building and your vision to how that will help more and more people that wouldn't necessarily have access to capital. But when banks are getting more efficient, now they're going to have more access to that capital. And it's going to help people that may never have had loans before be able to get loans.
Oh, that's a great question. So when we help folks, banks, in this case, credit unions, finance companies, is to be able to process as many applications as possible in the most cost-efficient way, right? So back in the day, you probably done this, right? Like paper-based applications, and like when a person keeps reading, oh, did you say 10,000 or 11,000? Like, and like it all becomes a kind of like this. And they say, oh, and you need to give me the proof of residence. All this process they used to live in paper has been digitalized. However, even the process of being digitalized, the channels through which you kind of collect that information were disjointed, right? It would be email, it would be like a scan, like a text message, or things like that. And even that data was not fully reliable, right? Because it doesn't come from the source, right? So nowadays, with the advent of API integration, things like that, now you can actually get a lot of information from the sources themselves. The problem is that you need to connect to them. Right? So we are the infrastructure tool so that if someone wants to connect to the best-in-class providers of income verification, employment verification, data verification, valuations, and things like that, we are that kind of like solution tool. If they want to set workflows for like their applications, they can do that on a platform. So what does that translate into? If you lower the cost of an application and processing an application, that means that ultimately, like that bank, credit, finance company is going to be willing to see the next application, right? Because that means another chance, another look to someone that today, because the costs are so high, they are saying, hey, I'm tapped out on my acquisition costs. I just cannot see the next application. This is the amount of loans that I've been able to originate, and this is the amount of money that I was willing to spend. Goodbye, right? So When you lower those costs, that means they can look at more folks. They can look at more folks. Their algorithms will also learn more, right? Because they are, hey, the more looks, the more the algorithms can be like, oh, I can see like, I have the ability to kind of see like pattern recognition, things like that. So that in itself is what the product does. We of course help them see cost of data, operations, and ultimately we create tools that are self-serve. What does that mean? They don't need to rely on outside teams of engineers that can either do it. Their business teams, capability in non-technical teams can make the changes, or if they want to go on a more sophisticated, there's stuff that they can do it. So that's in a nutshell what the product does. It's a pretty exciting set of solutions and applications that the lenders have. And borrowers notice it, right? It's much faster to go through a funnel. It's much, they have a clear set of like, I'm going to know within 5 minutes instead of like 3 days and not knowing where my application is at. Those are the elements. Give me certainty of the process, like duration of the process, but also like getting an answer, right? There's nothing more frustrating than living and not understanding what the next step is. With our platform, like we solve all.
That's really cool and a unique way of looking at it. That the more efficient the banks are, the less their application cost is, which means that they're going to have more money to lend and be able to take those more marginal applications, which could mean a house or not a house for somebody, which is incredible. Yeah, so that's very cool what you're working on. So let's talk about your business then in terms of leading with heart, but we also need to make a profit, right? At some point, a profit needs to be made or your investors aren't going to be super happy with you. So how do you balance like leading with the heart but still making sure that there's a profit at the end of the day for the business?
Because you love your customers, but you also love your employees and you also love your customers, right? So you need to lead, although we want to think about love is infinite, you also need to distribute that love, right? So that's kind of what from the heart kind of is for me, right? That if you could actually just give away your product or do it for free, your employees are going to starve, share it with the higher negative return. And ultimately, you're not going to be able to get more customers. So having the ability to kind of make an honest return enables everyone to win. That's very important, right? Like I don't think there's any issue with building a profitable business and justifying that you're just capturing a little bit of the value that you're creating. And as long as you're not an outsized component, I think everyone is very happy to, right? So they are saving millions of dollars of development costs and building this tool that we built for them. And in return, we actually reinvest that money in terms of keep that system in place so that they have the best. They don't have to worry about it ever again, right? And our employees also get compensated in a way that like reflects the value they're creating for the customers, and so do our investors, right? I think there's no contradiction there. If anything, it just creates this. It just stabilizes it, like the flywheel of value creation.
If I can summarize a little bit what I understood that you said, so there is a balance between those three stakeholders in the equation: the employee, the customer, and the shareholder. And it's in that balance between all three, or that equilibrium between all that you're able to make a profit, but also lead with the heart and not worry about ethics. Like your ethics are solid within that, and you're not having to, cheat or do some funny money business.
Definitely, right? It's you kind of like your customers know that you need to kind of keep the lights on, and they want you to keep the lights on because they're betting on your product being there for decades to come, right? So they don't have to worry about finding a replacement for you. Yeah, your employees know that like they cannot capture all the value either because they know that you need to be able to invest in the product. You have investors that they give you the money to grow. So all of those part, and like it's not a one-time game theory game, right? It's an ongoing, repeatable game. That aligns the incentives in such a way that like, hey, this is not a one, we're just gonna play this once, we're gonna play this every day. So that I think that creates that alignment that everyone understands. And you need to communicate with all parties. We're not the first business, right? Like businesses, that's capitalism, and even before capitalism, like businesses have vendor quality concerns like this.
Yeah. So, and how long has the startup been active?
We've been almost 4 years.
4 years. Oh, wow. So what type of advice would you give to someone that is kind of contemplating starting a heart-led business or just having that balance, especially within, the 4 years that you've been in business, I'm sure there's been quite some ups and downs.
Yeah. I think that it's important to kind of like find it. Like, there was something that we were talking with my co-founder, right? Like, sometimes it's not as important. There's a lot of things you love in life, right? But like sometimes you really do something that you're good at, right? Because I love planes, but that doesn't mean I should be a pilot. I love Formula One, that doesn't mean I should be a Formula One driver. And neither doesn't mean that I'm good at it. But I do think for some of the things that we're doing today with Infuse, those are things that I'm good at, right? And I happen to like them too. So when you find that intersection of like, you're good at something, and on top of that, you love it, it's a perfect kind of duality that enables you to do it. It's something you should pursue. Because sometimes when people say do something you love, I think that they're missing the part of like, hey, actually, are you good at executing on that particular subset of things, right? So don't only do something you love, do something you love doing, but you actually happen to be very good at it. Or that at least you have early signs that you were very good at it. Otherwise, you're going to go for the false set of things and you're going to fall in a trap, right? And if I may add to that, when things are going well, reality is you're going to like to do it. Once things aren't working, you kind of like most jobs. Like, especially if you're as a founder, it's something that is probably perceived as boring, so you say. Reality is that when things aren't going well, everyone's happy. Like people, it's got it. And that creates a flywheel. So it allows you to attract talent. It allows you to things like that. Obviously, like, that's why it's so important to keep the original mystique of the place, right? Because I'm sure that like working at Google the first couple of years, it had that kind of the spirit of we're doing it because we know we're doing it. But when things are going well, you just attract certain talent too, right? So I think we're at that stage where we're starting to get people that are more like, hey, things are going well, like everyone likes it. So that the magic, that's 0 to 1 on like why you do it. It has to be a combination of you love it and you're good at it.
Yeah. Would you add a third component to that, in that there's a market for what you do as well? Because you could be really good at something and love to do it, but nobody's going to buy it.
It's cool. Yeah. There's this entire thesis around fast moving water island that you're good at it, you love it. And on top of that the market is hot, because you can have the biggest brains and ability to execute in a space. If the market sucks, you're not going to succeed. That's kind of like they have this entire desert of very good founders that have failed, right? And they probably love what they did and they were probably very good at what they did, but they was not fast moving water, right? Like they were just stuck, right? It just, you want your kayak to go in the direction you want to go.
Yeah, the kind of blockchain, I think, comes to mind with that for the early years of blockchain technology. Yeah, it's like a solution AI. With AI too. Yeah. Oh. Well, cool. So, Andres, how can people learn a little bit more about you and Fuse?
Fuse is fusefinance.com for our website. And for me, like LinkedIn is probably the best source. I've had great founders through my career, and being able to return that favor of paying it forward, just feel free to reach out that way.
Awesome. Well, thanks for offering that to the show listeners as well. And thank you very much for being on the show today. I know you're probably very busy. You're in New York, right?
I'm in New York City. You can see a little bit of both.
The window looks great. Yeah. Thanks for spending your time with us and sharing your heart and your story as well. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in for today's show. I really do appreciate that as well. Make sure you're checking out what Andres is doing, and especially in the show notes, because we're going to link up some of those links as well. And also, if you could do what other smart and considerate listeners are doing, and that is giving a rating and review of the show. It really helps spread the word about what we're doing here and help other heart-led business owners get the advice and just know that they're not alone out there doing what they love and doing what they're good at. So until next time, lead with your heart.
You've been listening to the Heart-Led Business Show, hosted by Tom Jacobs. Join us next time for another inspiring journey into the heart of business.